Hi everyone. All right, time to do a little bit of review. This thing looks really intimidating. I know you guys have been studying since last week when I gave it to you. I thought I'd make a few last-minute videos to help those of you who are maybe a little panicked about the oncoming final exam. So let's talk about the astronomy section of the final exam study guide. All right, first thing on here are the phases of the moon. So, two important words we need to know about the phasing of the moon, and they're waxing and waning. Waxing is when the sunlit part of the moon is on the right side. See, like right there in this picture here, it's on the right side. And when the moon is waxing, the light's going to stay on that right side the whole time. Waning is when the light is going to start to become smaller and smaller and smaller. It's waning, getting smaller. And at that time, the light's going to be on the left. So whenever it's waning, it's on the left. And knowing those two words is going to help us know all the different names of the different phases. So for example, here are our 8 phases that we need to know. Starting at new moon, the moon is completely dark. Then we begin waxing. Waxing, we get a little brighter. First, we have a waxing crescent, where we only see a small spot. Then we have a waxing quarter, or first quarter. That's about half of the moon. Then we have the waxing gibbous. We can almost see the whole moon, but not quite. Remember, it's waxing since the light is on the right. And then we have a full moon. We can see the whole moon. And then after having a full moon, we're going to start to get darker again, right? And since we're getting darker, we need to use that word waning. So, after a full moon, we begin to have a waning gibbous. It's starting to become a little darker. See that light on the left side? That's indicative of a waning moon. After a waning gibbous, it's going to get a little darker still. And we're going to be on a last quarter moon or a waning quarter moon. This time the light is on the left and only about half of the moon is lit up. Then finally, the light is going to keep getting less and less, and then we'll only have this slight sliver here left on the left side, and that is a waning crescent. All right, those are our moons. So let's move on to the next thing we need to know. We need to know the order or the life stages of a star. So we don't need to know specific information about each of the star levels, so I'm not going to talk about all of them. All I'm going to talk about are those stages, okay? If you're interested in relearning that, look back at our past notes, okay? This is more of a quick go-over since this is a review, right? All right, so first stage of a star is a nebula. This cloud of gas and dust that's just in space. And once we get enough of that gas and dust, it's going to start to gain its own gravity. It's going to begin to spin. And when it begins to spin, we get something called a protostar. And as more of this spinning happens, it's going to create more gravity. It's going to spin even faster. It's going to suck in heat towards the middle, and it's going to start to heat up. Eventually, it's going to pull all the gas and dust towards the center there, and then we're going to go from a protostar to a main sequence star. A main sequence star undergoes nuclear fusion to create its own energy, and our sun is a main sequence star. Now, after a main sequence star, we can get two things. We can either get a red giant or a supergiant, huge, or red giant, still big, but not as big as a supergiant. So, the red giant has a different path, right? We have the main sequence star. One path is the red giant, right? We get a red giant. And then after a red giant, we'll get a white dwarf. A white dwarf is a smaller star. It's dim. It's kind of the leftover parts of a star. So that's one path that we can take when it comes to a main sequence star. But there's the other path, right? The path of the supergiants. All right, so what you need to think about when it comes to a supergiant is a star is continually getting bigger. Bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually a supergiant gets so big that we have a supernova, an explosion of the star. it releases a lot of energy. So here's our two paths after a main sequence star. We can go from a main sequence star to a red giant and then a white dwarf, or we can go from a main sequence star to a supergiant and then to a supernova. Now, does it always happen in that order? No, it doesn't always happen in that order. Maybe the supergiant becomes so big that its own gravity starts to pull light back towards the center, and it'll start to create a black hole. But that is a different story for a different time, right? What we care about is the sequence. Nebula, protostar, main sequence star. Then we can either have a red giant and a white dwarf, or a supergiant and a supernova. All right. Beyond that, we need to know the order of the planets. After the Sun, we have Mercury. Then we have Venus, our neighbor, because the next planet is us, Earth. After Earth, we have our red neighbor, Mars, planet that we hope to visit someday. We're currently working hard on it. After Mars, we have the biggest planet in our solar system, Jupiter. Jupiter is huge. And then after Jupiter, we have Saturn, the one with the rings made of rocks and ice and dust. Then after Saturn, we have Uranus. And then the final planet in our solar system is Neptune. Neptune is so far away, it takes it about 165 years to circle the Sun. It's a long time. A long, long time. All right, technically after Neptune, we do have a dwarf planet. And that dwarf planet is called Pluto. But those are the planets, and that's all you need to know when it comes to astronomy for our final exam study guide. I'm sure I'll see you in a moment for the chemistry part of the study guide review. All right, good luck studying. I'll talk to you all later.